Hi.
All right. Okay. Well, I'm so happy to see you all. I hope you had a good weekend. I'm kind of like even confused on what day it is from traveling, and I'm right smack in the middle of a contemplative retreat. Luckily, this is like their break time. So I get to be over here with you, which is fun. And it also gives me that opportunity to talk about contemplation and what that even means. We've talked about that a little bit before when I asked about your practices. And this is like a really good time to talk a little bit about that again, because we're deep in it right now. So, and definitely encourage any of you washing anybody. I have people who came from Alaska, and I guess that was the furthest one, but definitely Washingtonians and Oregonians. You should consider coming next year. All right. So today we're going to start with a brief check-in, just seeing how everybody's doing, what's coming up for you, if anything, either around the actual learning, or things that you're asked to do, or any of the links, and also just anything that's going on for you in your life, or things that are coming up for you around death and dying, if any of that has come up. And then also if there's anything that's like back here in the background of your mind that you think might be taking up just a little tiny bit of space, even while you're present on screen, I encourage you to share that. So after we have a little check-in from everybody, we'll go to a chant to kind of, I call it the sorbet between the chit chat and the kind of digging into content. So we'll do a chant. And then we'll go back. We'll talk a little bit more about contemplation, talk a little bit more about questions of identity, and then you'll go into some small groups, and we'll see what time it is there. So that is the plan. So starting then, I'd love to hear how you're doing. I'd love to hear a check-in from anybody. I'm not gonna like call out your name. But it'd be lovely to hear from everybody. Even if you were to say, I don't really have anything to check in, or even if you say, I don't really feel like sharing anything, like that's fine too. But it'd be nice to hear everybody's voices. So I'm not going to call on you unless nobody says anything, and then I will start calling on you. So if anyone wants to begin, what's up? How's it going? Naomi, how's it going over there on the other side of the world?
Well, it's a beautiful day here today. It was going to be very cold, but so far it's very nice. Blue skies. And I've just been for a nice walk on the beach, so that's a nice beginning to my day.
Mm.
I'm finding, I mean, even though we've only done the three, this is the third class, we've only done two, I'm feeling like it's ever present in my mind. And I did a beautiful 3 hour welcome to spring yoga session the other day with a couple of lovely women here locally, and it was about embracing the new and letting go of things, and it felt very poignant for me. And I have a very dear friend who has had a series of health crises, one after the other, after the other, after the other, and is in a really dark place at the moment. And so I'm feeling sort of like maybe I can pull some things from here and there, some of the resources, some of the stuff that the girls were doing, and because I feel like people are trying to motivate this woman to get going, come on, you can't just stay wallowing, get going. And I'd like to give her an opportunity to just not get going and just kind of hang out and maybe try and create a bit of space for her.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I think that that's very much come about because I've started doing this and it's so much, I'm kind of mulling over it and how can I bring it into my work? And yeah, so it's great. Yeah.
That's awesome, Naomi. Thank you for sharing all that. That makes me feel great that you're pulling that from it. And also, your nice walk on the beach this morning is a beautiful image. I really hear what you're saying about your friend and those other responses. And I think if we looked at that as a person grieving, right? Which they are when someone is having those health challenges. And we treated them more like a person who's grieving rather than a person who's like sick that needs to like have something happen. I think your intuition feels so perfect. When I teach about grief and when I do grief counseling, I always say that my number one word in grief is permission. And you just do whatever you want. And we were sharing in this, or I was sharing in this retreat. I don't remember what the rest of the context of the conversation was. I think it was some like a scripture we were reading or something about resting. And I was saying how one of a person that I was seeing for grief counseling this summer, her brother had just died, and her father had died like 3 months before, and then the brother died suddenly, and he died of a drug overdose. And so there was all of this swirling around, and she's really struggling, and doesn't get a lot of support from her mom, and her mom seems very self-centered, which is another thing I say, grieving people in general are self-centered. But her mom, it seems, is kind of like, "Oh, my son, my son." And my client is going, my brother, my brother. And anyway, throughout that conversation, at one point, my client said, I have some friends that were telling me, I told them that I'm always wanting to talk to my brother and talk out loud to my brother. And my friend suggested to me that maybe I could like write him a letter and I could just write down everything that I'm thinking and that I'd like to say to him. And she's like, and I think that's a good idea, but I don't know if I have the energy. And I said, well, I'm going to give you a different perspective. I think that's too much for you right now. Like, you got to now like write it down. Like, all of a sudden, this thing that's just like happening in your grief process now has to become an assignment. Now has to become this work, this thing that you have to produce. And it's not that your friend is wrong or stupid or, whatever. They don't get it. And so they're giving you this sort of fix it idea rather than really truly being with you and what you're in right now. And so that's what I suggested to her. What if you didn't do anything? Just keep doing what you're doing. Think about him in your head, talk about him out loud if you want to, but unless you yourself feel inspired to suddenly start writing it down, then get that out of your head that that's something that you should do. And I think what you're talking about is like a variation of that with what people are telling your friends, right? So that's so much of in our grief work is this like, we got to fix it, we got to fix it, we got to fix it. And also, I'll say anytime when I'm teaching about grief, but not in grief counseling, I'll always say, if you don't write anything else down in my class, write this down. I might have said this to you the other day. I said, write this down. You cannot stop this person's suffering. There's nothing you can do to stop their suffering. So what if you stopped trying and then ask yourself, then what can I do? If I can't stop their suffering, what can I do? And of course, the answer is I can just be with them and love them and bear witness to the fact that they are going to have to walk through this either way. I also sometimes in some of my writings, I've talked about what I call the smugness of health. And that's just because I'm sassy that way. But this idea of like, I'm healthy and I see that you're ill. So just don't be like that anymore. Just do this, just take a walk, just do the thing, right? But that's all coming from the place of a person who is not experiencing that at all, right? And there's this oftentimes, especially in like health related world, there's very much this it's like illness shaming, I guess we could say, right? Um, so I love your intuition of giving her something other, or I think you said her, giving her something other than a task, a job, like get up, have the animo. Instead, just like bearing witness, and I'm here, and I'll hang out with you through whatever's going on. Yeah. So, and what I always hope for people is that feels like a relief that we can let go of the idea that we have to come up with the perfect thing to do for someone because there really isn't anything we can do. And so hopefully when we realize that it could just be our presence and our really truly authentic presence, that's the biggest gift we can give. So I think she's really lucky to have you. I do feel very fortunate that I haven't faced any really significant health issues. Um, but I see that as one of the most difficult things that people have to deal with while they're living in this world is the whole sudden thrusting into the medical system. Suddenly you're not like as good as everybody else. There's so much losing a sense of self. Talk about like identity, right? Losing a huge sense of your identity. Um, so so yeah, I'm glad that you're pulling things from this. And that sounds like also you have a lot of really powerful ways to resource yourself. And through that ability for you to be resourced is also what makes you good or better at being with other people who are lacking resource in the moment. Thank you for sharing.
Um,
Any,
it's,
yeah.
no, that's like it brings up so many questions for me. Like, and I don't know if we have time, but you just tell me. Um, I think about a situation. Okay, so my mom has non-alcoholic cirrhosis of her liver. Um, and then I think about like she likes having her drinks. She's not an alcoholic, but she will, have her Bloody Mary, have her drinks, and it's hard to watch that. When it's not actually not gonna. I mean, and I know I'm gonna face that because she does. It's part of her I don't know, just having a good time and being social, and so I mean, how that is just so hard to do.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely hard to do. So, obviously, I don't know your mom, I don't know your dynamic and all of that kind of thing. So I can only speak in sort of a general way. So if anything feels like disconnecting, like please forgive me in advance. But what I think, what I've come to through my personal experiences and also being married to an alcoholic and a drug addict, um, which is different. Like I understand you're saying your mom is not that. Uh, What I've really come to is that people, like, they're gonna do what they do. And we're all gonna die. Like, we're all gonna die. And sometimes I think about, for example, I don't know if this seems there's some young women down in the town where I live, and they are real health nuts, and they have this little health food store or something. And I was looking for something tahini, and they're like, oh, we don't have any tahini because we're just on this 1 year or not 1 week, like rice diet that we're doing with our guru. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And then they keep going on and on. And then they were like, can you imagine like our teacher's done that for a year, a whole year? Can you imagine like how good you would feel if you just like only ate rice for a year? And yes, I love your face, Vanessa, because I'm just like looking with like this poker face and being a lot older than I said, no, I can't imagine what that would feel like because I would never, ever, ever, ever do that because it means I'm giving up my life right now as it is for some idea of what might happen in the future if I eat rice all the time. Like, no, I wouldn't do that. And I don't actually admire your teacher for that, quite frankly. So I think that it is hard to watch when people are doing someone we love and someone who's intelligent is doing something that is potentially harmful for them. And I think for me, I've had to get to the place of you just do you. And when I think about like with my alcoholic husband, I still really like him and we still hang out, but I'll say to him, I'm just not going to be involved in any of that. So if you're presenting with any of that, then don't come anywhere near me. And so being able to also create a boundary depending on where that relationship is with the person, like you could be like, Mom, if you're going to do that, I don't want to be a part of it. Um, and that would be fair, but it also sounds like from what you're describing that she's not an alcoholic, and I love the way you describe it. It's just like her thing and her way of being social. And I think for me that work would be more like about you, without being like the work's about you, but like about your inner thing of going, this is this grown woman with agency. She's lived however many years on this planet, and now she's doing this, and this is part of what's giving her pleasure. And is it shortening her life? maybe. And I know from reading all of your things too, we've all faced a lot of death. Like Naomi, I meant to say too, I was so moved by what the story you told about your ex-husband was really, really powerful. I can imagine how that is a lingering trauma. But I think when we've experienced so much death too, I don't want to be like nihilistic, but also like, I don't know, you could die because you're having this Bloody Mary, but you could also die because you're you get in a car accident or
Mhm.
I guess the last thing I'll say too is I don't know if I shared with you last week that my mom came on a call and she was like sort of hiding herself half the time. And then she's like, all right, I'm just going to show Molly my face and, to my dad. And they're like, I didn't want to show you my face because I fell down and I have this shiner. And I'm like, really, it was really hurt. And we knew that you would freak out. But my sister um, is a nurse and she's very uptight about everything and controlling about everything. And they were like, we thought you would freak out in an emotional way, but we didn't want to tell your sister because we thought she would freak out in a way of like, you can't go to your summer house anymore. And I said, listen, there's something I want you to know about me if you don't already. I will never limit anything. Like that's your thing. If that's how you're going to die because you fell down at a place you love, so be it. Like you're dying anyway. I don't have intentions of limiting a thing. So
Mm.
I don't know if
Yeah,
any of
yeah,
those
that's
pieces
all.
help,
Yeah.
but it is hard. It's definitely hard. And like I told you, it's come hard one, I think, from watching so many deaths, but also I told you when I first started working at the Bailey Boucher house and I would see these guys that they're dying from AIDS and they're like getting themselves up out of their bed and into their wheelchair and down the elevator and then like smoking a cigarette and like getting someone to bring them vodka or whatever. And I'm just like, what is going on? And now, 20 years later, I'm like,
Mhm.
whatever, like whatever. Yeah.
Mm. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, Vanessa, without having it be like so pointed on you, I probably with that, like I would remind you to use your own critical thinking too about what else is in there about like the very specific relationship between you and your mom. Like that might also be driving some of that worry, or like if you felt like you had to parent her previously, or like just I would just do some thinking too about what are some of the other things that aren't specifically about the behavior, but it's about an entire lifetime with this person that you love that's culminating in this moment.
I just want to say something about that specifically. My mom's 82, lots of health conditions that she's dealing with. And I am always butting in and I am often limiting. But like big example that's happened for the last year plus, she's got this osteo surgeon that is always like, hey, I did your knee. I could give you a total shoulder replacement. And he really pushes it. And then she's got this PT that really pushes it. Hey, it won't be any problem. My dad did it, blah, blah, blah. But I know my mom and I know her tolerance for pain and I know what this surgery is. And I also know it's not like when she moves her shoulder, she doesn't have the pain, right? So I have been this like big police when it comes up, when she has the higher shoulder pain, I'm just the one that's like putting my foot down, like, no, like you have osteoporosis, you have arthritis. Like, I mean, I've done more research than anybody else, but I really limit things. And maybe I don't know how I could stop, but like I don't want her to get that surgery. And if we're gonna do a surgery, I want it to be the knee replacement where she'll be able to keep walking. You know what I mean? But I don't know. Isn't that kind of our job to be their health advocate on some level if we know more than they know?
Do we know more than they know?
Well, when it comes to shoulder replacement surgery, yes.
Okay, so you know more than she knows about a particular surgery, right?
Yes.
So I'm just pushing you, right? Like, do
Sure,
you
that's
know
fine.
she knows about who she is and what she wants? And I mean, I can only share obviously like my perspective and my experience, but No, I would also, if one, I would not want an 82-year-old person to get surgery if at all possible, like not getting surgery. But then, like, if she doesn't want to deal with it, then she doesn't want to deal with it. And if it hurts her, then okay, it hurts her. Like, that's her choice. That's what she's doing. So,
But I feel like I'm protecting her from the recovery.
mhm.
It's like coming out of it, like it could be months of just and not moving. And then with not very stable, not good balance, and now you only have one arm to hang on to things. I mean, yeah, I mean, I know you guys we don't want to talk about the specifics, but I can't even imagine if I didn't have a strong opinion with some of the health decisions that she wants to make.
Yeah, again, as a general practice, I can't go too deep in someone I don't know, and we're all not very faithful reporters, right? All of
Yeah.
us, because we're always coming from our own perspective. So, with that said, where I live right now in my life, Dina, and take it or leave it, but is I want to be connected to people I love, connected to my parents, connected. So, if a thing is creating a disconnection, like this push
Mhm.
about this, then I would give it up. And
Yeah.
without being facetious, I would say, does your mom have any like cognitive incapacity? That's when I was saying, do you know more than
Yeah.
she, right? Like, does she have dementia?
Mhm.
Is she,
Yeah.
incapable of understanding? And so I think that if a person doesn't have a cognitive, like a real cognitive disability, then we
Mhm.
allow them to make the choice that they're making.
No, I hear you. And that's an important distinction because it hasn't come in the way of our relationship. Our relationship is good. We kind of bicker about it every so often, and then the pain goes away, and then now she has a different pain. So, yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's important. Hmm.
Right. You just want to love
Yeah,
them through the pain,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just was like, I'm
Oh,
so
I'm glad you
guilty.
both said this because dealing with aging parents is a big part of why a lot of people start to think about this. So
Hmm.
these are
Yeah,
totally pertinent questions. Yeah.
yeah, cool.
Hmm. Um, Vanessa or Dina, do you have any check-in other than that you wanted to share, or does that feel good?
That's good. I'm good. I have more questions, but
Yeah.
that's good.
No, go for it.
For now. No, I don't. I mean, then it comes into the child like you have a young child, not a child, like they're older, a legal adult, but then they're doing things that maybe are not, healthy or damaging. Like, do you not care when they're 22, versus 81? I can understand, like
Well, I think the difference to me is, so one, and I know you know this too, but it's not that we don't care.
no,
It's
I
that I'm
know. No,
choosing not
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
But I would say no, because a 22-year-old's prefrontal cortex is barely functioning. So in that case, I would say, even though you don't have any cognitive disabilities, you do not have full brain development yet. And yes, I would have an opinion about that. Or like I just had one of my nieces visiting and she just turned 19 and she was up in Canada. She saw a cannabis shop. She's like, can I go into that cannabis shop? And I was like, I don't know, what's the age? And she's like, at 19. And I was like, well, I guess I can't stop you from going into the cannabis shop then, can I? So then she would, go down, she'd like smoke a little bit in the evenings and stuff. And she came up, what did I think of that or something? And I said, well, I mean, if you were my child, I probably wouldn't forbid you to do this because you're going to do it anyway and you're legal to do it. But I would also say to you, I would not want you doing that. And these are the reasons why. And I just gave her these very three specific reasons. And I was like, I'm 40 years older than you. Take it or leave it. But that's why I don't think those things are a good idea. So yeah, I do think we have a different responsibility, especially 22, like early 20s, like, and that's it's such a painful and tricky age too. Like that age in many ways is like my heart because they're both on, like, we kind of use them. Like if we want them to be an adult, we're like, why weren't you an adult? And why didn't you take care of that thing? And why didn't you do that? And you should have looked out for your sister, like whatever the thing is. But then when they do something that's their own, but we don't like it, then we're like, you're just a child. You shouldn't be doing that.
Hmm.
So I also recognize that they're in such a weird place of coming into themselves I don't have children of my own, but I would feel like I would very much want to contain them, but also know that I can't control them. And what if it was my kid, what I know is I'm going to have a higher chance of influencing them if they continue to stay connected with me. So if that means sometimes I have to like eat my words, or, what I really want is they keep staying connected.
Mm.
It's tricky. Carrie, Tracy, Deb. Also, just always know no one's ever sidelining a conversation. Like, I've been teaching so long, and I believe that teaching comes from storytelling, and teaching comes from like these real life examples and questions. And if I ever felt like something was like taking us down a different route that I didn't want to go so far down that route, then I would let you know that. So I don't want anyone ever to feel limited with what you bring up or ask. Never feel like you're asking too many questions or they're too random or anything like that. Tracy, Carrie, or Deb, anything you wanted to check in on? Nope. Okay.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Awesome. Tracy's coming down to Mexico, so there's that. I'm gonna check in on that offline. All right. Your background's doing some funky stuff, Tracy, but it's okay. You look like you're made of AI.
Yeah, I think it's because there's a window behind me, so it's not picking up. I think it has something to do with glare. And I've tried to fix it, but there it goes again. I'm not sure what to do about it.
That's okay. That's okay. That's Zoom is its own thing, and all these filters are its own thing. I was seeing a client one time, and it's like, "Oh, you look so pretty. Do you usually wear makeup? I've never seen you wearing makeup like that." And she's like, "Oh no, it's like a filter. It's like eyebrows and lipstick." And then she showed me how to do it online, and then I couldn't get it off. And I'm like teaching these classes, and like my eyebrows are in like different places of my glasses, or I'll like move too fast and my lips are still over here. And I finally got that off. So yeah, kind of like cat ears or something like that. Okay. All right. So with that check-in, we're going to come into chant. This is a different chant. It's called the Mahamrityunjaya. I saw that there wasn't anybody who filled in the questions for consideration yet who had any idea about the yoga knowledge stream. So I first wanted to remind you that that is totally, totally fine. When I first started this work, it was always only yoga people. Over time, I often have people on screen that are no yoga people. At the same time, I think it is still important because I'll talk a little bit more about the idea of contemplation, but on this contemplative retreat, when we learn sort of different perspectives and how different groups or cultures think about things, it's not then that we should think that way, but it just gives us more ideas about how we might think. So, and I actually got a really, really beautiful compliment that I wanted to share because maybe it's powerful for our work. I have a student here who is also a client. And we were talking about something, and she said, I guess you just got through all of this through your faith. And she said, I always look at you as this person, you know so much about all these different religions, but you don't identify as religious. It's like you've just stitched together from all of these different threads a spiritual base that really works for you. And nobody had really put it that way, and I hadn't really thought of it that way. But when people ask me how I made it through these years, I always say it's through my faith. And so I think when we share and learn from different perspectives, not only does it give us a potential just different perspective and open our mind, but it also maybe gives us also threads to pull so that we also can stitch together something that feels very, very personal to us and very authentic, especially for those of us that don't have another structured religion that we participate in. Sometimes I sort of envy those people, even though I don't do it. So we're going to start with the the chant of the Mahamrityunjaya, which does come from that stream. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about it, and then I'll send you a link to it so that you can learn a little bit more. And then we'll chant it again or I'll go deeper into it when we start talking about that knowledge stream. This is a chant. It's an ancient Vedic chant. So that means it comes from early India, as the Vedas are the oldest known written religious texts. They're the oldest known written texts are the Vedas, and they happen to be religious texts. This comes from there. It's part of a group of mantras that are called Shanti mantras, meaning they're not invoking any particular deity. They're really talking about more sort of like a general beseeching to God or Brahman or whatever we might call that, consciousness change, all the things we wrote in where we said what we met, that divine presence. Maha is the great, they call it the great death conquering mantra or the great fear conquering mantra. And they talk about mantras being both locked and unlocked mantras. What they talk about with unlocked mantras is there's something that has been said by so many thousands of people over thousands of years that it is imbued with sacred energy, so that anybody who says that will have that energy. And we talked a little bit about that last week when I talked about the Sanskrit language in particular. So this is the great death conquering mantra, and I'll chant it and I'll just, ask you how it feels, and then we'll move on. I'll chant it twice. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Varanam Ur Om Agamivandanam Shan Shan. So they just went away at the end of my chant. Sorry about that. So that's the Mahamrityunjaya. Did it sound familiar to anybody?
It cut out a lot. Like
Yeah, you were freezing during it.
Oh,
just got
darn it.
little
Okay.
snips of it.
Oh, darn it. Okay. And if I have to move my computer, I'll do that on a break. Okay, so let me try it again. Fingers crossed. I'll invoke God to let me say the chant. All right. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Vardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityor Mokshiyamamrita. To chant it really fast in just one time to get it out.
Yeah, I've definitely heard it. I've heard it. Yeah. Shivananda or something. I'm not sure.
Do you have any sense of what it is about, Dina?
No. Well, you just told us, but no, I wouldn't have remembered.
Yeah. Anybody else? Naomi? So the cool thing about the Mahamrityunjaya, and I'll come back to it later, but this just little quickie is it's saying more or less, let me grow into like the fullness of who I am. And at that point where I have come into my fullness, then release me into whatever that next thing is. And there's a word in there, rukamiva, which is like a cucumber, something on like a creeper vine. And that's important because the idea is that, like an apple tree, an apple becomes ripe and then it falls from the tree. Where cucumbers, watermelon, squash, all that stuff, if it's not actually picked when it's ripe, then it just rots into the ground, just languishes into the ground. And so it's this idea of that we sort of have this, like, we have this like sort of a predetermined life, and that we fully express that life. And then when it's fully expressed, like, take us away, don't let us languish in the ground. So they call it, it's the great fear conquering mantra, because it's sort of this idea, and we'll talk more about that I would be happy at that moment because I'm being released back into that, whatever it was that I came from, right? I think it was Deb that you wrote in the questions for contemplation, like that it says, or for consideration, that what the religious tradition, it says, when from dust I come and to dust I will return, right? And that doesn't always work for everybody. One of my mentors, who actually is the founder of this retreat center I'm at, she was very Lutheran. But she didn't like that either. And she would say, I like to change it from love I come and from love I will return. And so when we were talking about what would that thing be that we came from and that we go to, it's sort of invoking that, saying, I'm not afraid to go back to that next thing. I was only a cucumber for this period of time. The other thing I always like to remind people of, and this might be totally irrelevant to some of you, you might have never heard somebody say this, but you might have, when someone will say, oh, well, their work was done here. And what I can tell you is that any like platitude truism that you can say to a grieving person, just stop. That's the first rule of thumb. But I think that when spiritually minded people say that, that's kind of what they're invoking, this idea of, oh, they must have come into their fullness. Sure, that could potentially be a helpful idea, but I don't think it's very helpful when you're telling that to someone who's died and they're 13 or 52, or some of my nephew who suicided. Like, that doesn't even make sense, and I would feel offended by anyone's like helpful suggestion. So, but when you hear people say that, I think their work was done there. That's sort of where it's coming from, this idea that we would do this work and that we'd know, or God knows when it's done, and then we cut off. So that's what the Mahamrityunjaya is about there. There is, do you all, I know I asked before, but do you all know who Ram Dass is? Kind of, yes, definitely, no. Okay, no, sort of, a little bit. Okay, walking each other home, yeah. So Ram Dass he died just a couple of years ago, a very, very prominent American spiritual teacher guy. And he was really an incredible human being. He actually was a Harvard professor in clinical psychology, and he started to study religious experiences and religious insights through the use of psychedelics. And then he got really caught up into that with Timothy Leary, who also was a Harvard professor. They both got kicked out of Harvard. Timothy Leary then was declared by Richard Nixon as the most dangerous man in America. And Richard Alpert, who became Ram Dass, went over to India and took a completely different route, and just has amazing, incredible stories about his turning from Richard Alpert into Ram Dass. This is my name drop central, but I got to do 4 personal retreats with him. So 4 times I went and traveled to his home, and it was just me and him in his home and just talking. And so that was pretty amazing and special. But the reason I'm bringing him up right now is that there's a documentary about him called Fierce Grace, which is awesome. But in that, there's a part where he writes a letter to a family whose daughter was murdered in the park, like a little girl, and she just went to the park, and I guess they must have already had some relationship with Ram Dass, and he wrote them this letter that obviously moved them because they read the letter in the documentary. And there's a part in that letter, her name was Rachel, and he says Rachel's work was done here. And it's interesting because, and you'll have whatever reaction you want, and I don't need to like apologize or defend Ram Dass at all. So if you like hate all his work, like that's fine. You don't like what he says, that's fine. I can also let you know one of the reasons I really respect him is he laughs at the idea that he's dead, that he's a spiritual teacher or that he's a guru. He's like, no, I'm not. Like that person's a guru, or that, like I'm an academic. But he's very much like the real deal. So, but it's interesting when you see him saying it, he's coming from so much presence and knowledge and practice and deep like depths of his being to say these things to these people that in that case seems comforting. And I think it's just important, like for me, I think about it's humbling and important to recognize that somebody else could say something and it seems like a good thing to say. That doesn't mean that it's good when I say it, because I am not that person. And it's never going to land the way it did when that person said it. So I'll show that to you because it's pretty extraordinary what he writes to this family and then their reaction to it. So that's the Mahamrityunjaya. What I wanted to move into next was two things. One is and it's always fine if you didn't. I cannot say that enough times. Like often I'm going to ask you, oh, did you read that link? Did you read that article? Did you listen to that podcast? And what I promise you, and I hope you can promise me back, is you don't ever have to be sheepish. You don't ever have to be like, oh no, I didn't read it. I didn't get time. Like that's totally fine. So when I'm asking that, I'm literally just asking it to see where are we at the beginning of a conversation. I'm never asking you because I'm like testing whether you did your homework, right? We are beyond that. So with that, did anyone have a chance to look at or listen to the Alain de Botton things that I sent, the podcast link? Or yeah, Deb, you did? No, that's okay. So looks like a couple people did. So I'm wondering if you would just, if there were like any insights or anything that was moving to you or interesting to you, or thinking about this idea of someone can be very, very what might look like religious, like living in a very religious structure, and then also not being religious. And does that feel invitational maybe, or might it feel invitational for other people that you know who don't buy into religion? And there's a lot of good reasons not to buy into religion. So I'm just curious what you took from that.
Well, I felt like I'm so on the same page as that guy. Like I've always loved the, rituals around being Jewish and the beautiful singing that you're going to find in an actual church. And like, I just felt like I agreed with a lot, and I've already done a lot of kind of his suggestions. And I also kind of checked in with my own prejudice about hearing a man with an English accent telling me how to think. Like whenever I have this weird prejudice, like if I play a meditation and it is a British man's accent, I'm always like, I don't care what you have to say. Like I always prefer to hear like either not the British accent or a woman. So yeah, I kept catching myself with that, but yeah, good ideas.
Interesting. Yeah. And yeah, and that was probably the I don't know the date of that podcast, but he was probably a lot younger too. So I always wonder how people have evolved since we're reading their book or listening to something, right? Like where they still are.
Yeah. And I love Kristen Tippett, and it's like she didn't play a big role in the podcast. He did most of the talking also.
See,
But
she makes
has a tendency to-
she makes me absolutely nutty. I was just
Really?
talking this
Yeah.
morning. And listen to Krista Tippett. So
Yeah.
anyway, there you
I
go.
don't as much anymore, but I did years ago a lot more.
I do have to wonder if it's like women of a certain age, because I just said that to my students last night. I said, I just really can't stand men. And I love men. Like I have lots of men friends. I've been married to a man, but
Yeah.
men writ large and particularly like white men, I'm just like,
Yeah.
no. No, 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 no.
Exactly. And I don't reserve that for the British accent, you know. It's just sometimes their ego is just so big and I'm just like, I got no time for it either.
So it could be as women of a certain age as well. Yeah. So Carrie, yes, what did you want to add in? It hopefully it's not about man
Uh,
hating.
I just think they've taken up too much space throughout history. That's the main
Oh, well,
reason. Like,
100%.
yeah, like, I mean, I have lots of man friends and I'm married to a man too, but I want to hear from other voices and other perspectives and,
Absolutely.
like not that kind of mansplaining, like imperialistic sort of tone, paternalistic.
Right. Yeah. Always right. Always right. That being said, though, Carrie, um, did you have a chance to listen to the interview with Alain de Botton?
No, I unfortunately I was on a fun retreat to the coast for the weekend.
Oh, good. Oh,
And I
good.
didn't check the email updates until earlier today, and I had a work thing until noon, so didn't get to
Absolutely.
much of it. But
Yeah, absolutely. So also just remembering, I'm on the same page as everybody about that. And also I'm going to provide you with the literature or the things that are the people that are doing that thing or talking about that thing. And if that in that case happens to be a white man or a white British man, then that's what we're going to be listening to. So there's no one else that's doing what Alain de Botton is doing. So Vanessa, Deb, any
I listened to it. And what do I liked about it was well, the point of it's so binary today. Like you either don't believe or you believe, and there's like no room for anyone in the middle. And like how in the future, and I think our society is like that so much in so many different ways, right? And I do think his view that in the future there will be a much more sophisticated like option for people to like do what he's talking about. And I was raised Catholic. I mean, I remember having to go to church and wearing the scarf over my head, and you're sitting there and you're just like, you better not move. And doing all my sacraments all the way up through confirmation. And there are things about the Catholic, and there's horrible things about the Catholic Church, and um there are things about the Catholic Church that, I mean, I still, if I go to another country, I want to go see the cathedrals and the beauty and the immenseness of them. And like we were in St. Peter's in the Vatican not that long ago. It's just like it's over the top. It's everything. It's and just I still get this feeling when I go into a church, this kind of warm peacefulness. And maybe that's just my association of how I was brought up, but like I feel like it's a place with so much focus on like, and I thought he talked about that too, like how religion has a place of reminding us, because every day is challenging to be a good human sometimes. And
or
so
you can be a human.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, no, I resonate with a lot of what he said.
I wrote down the word sophisticated, that you said, a sophisticated way. And that really like turned a light on for me because especially spending so much time in like yoga world, there is, I'm sorry, like this is just my own judgy perspective, but there is so much like I'm spiritual but not religious. And it's like so fluffy. There's no depth, there's no real focus, like you said. There's no maturity to it. And actually that's why I started to go into interfaith studies and interfaith teaching, was really because of my yoga students and them just being like, I'm just like so into yoga and I reject that church from before, but they really didn't even know anything about yoga. And they were just like taking the little fluffy bits that they liked, right? And so what I think is that word of like this sophistication and this depth and this weaving together of what you just spoke to about like that sense of awe and that sense of beauty and these sense of things that feel otherworldly. And that when we leave religion behind for whatever the good reasons we might, it's sort of like that's all been co-opted into the space of religion. So all of a sudden I have to throw that all away. Like that I can't even name that experience of awe of going into a giant cathedral as like a religious or an awe inspiring experience. And so that's really, I think, why I was so moved by it, is the level of sophistication, and that we really could develop spiritual practices, spiritual communities that are focused, and they do have depth, and they do have like this. I don't know what I'm actually like. There's some container. It's not just like everything's everything, right? Kind of thing. And I've seen in my own life, and I saw it in my sister's death, that and she literally said the words to me. I never really believed. We would fight because she would be like, "You're really into spiritual," and of course I was like, you can imagine, like I'm this me now. Like imagine how I was when I wasn't even as mature. Like so annoying. So I was always like, oh no, like it has to be this way, and you're not really spiritual. And she'd be like, yes, I am. My spirituality is all is one, or Native American spiritual. But it was very like diffuse. And literally when she was dying, she grabbed my hand. She's like, you got to fast track me. You have got to fast track me into some religious lane. And I just feel like what she meant, it was in that moment of like facing this existential crisis, that this very sort of loosey-goosey, no particular anything didn't seem to be doing it for her when really the rubber was hitting the road. So that's very much how I see his work and how I value his work. Yeah.
Mhm.
Anything to add, Deb, if you want to? There's no pressure to.
Well, what I realized was I don't think I saw that one. I saw these others and I saw the ones you were in. And I think I started that one before I had to leave for an appointment. But
Okay.
but now I realize that was, but I did see the guy sitting with the people around, and yeah.
Okay. So this one was actually a podcast, so you would listen to it. So
No, yeah. It might have
yeah,
been, was it,
don't worry about it.
thought it was the guy that had like all these people in front of him, or was that a video? Or is that the podcast?
The heck? I can't think of what was the guy that had all the people sitting in front of him.
He was singing. He was singing.
It's a chance, the chant things, the chant, the different
Uh,
stuff.
Yeah, that would, yeah.
So
yes.
somewhere I missed that, but yeah.
Okay. That's okay. And that's what I want you all to remember, that I will sometimes send you those things as like a basis for something that I'm going to talk about, but you don't even like, if you don't get to listen to it, don't worry about it. We can still talk about it. You're smart. Everybody, you can get what we're talking about and still have your insights and opinions. And also remember at the end of this, remember that I don't actually believe in the model that I send you stuff every week and you like, listen, you do all the homework and everything. And then we shut the computer and we're like, good. Now I've learned that. Like, I don't believe that. And I've been an academic my whole life. So what I do think is we stay engaged here and we stay engaged in conversation. So I always really ask you to like use your voice, be in the conversation. Doesn't even matter if you listened to the thing. Like, okay, this is my response to what someone else just said. And then once the course is over, that's when you have the rest of your life to go and like, oh, I am curious about that podcast or that book or something like that. So just don't feel no like pressure. Yeah, Dina.
I do think you have a really good story though about religion that, I mean, I'm not gonna push you to talk about it, but like I do think it's so relevant to like what we're talking about right now.
Are you talking about what you just shared about her sister?
No,
No, Vanessa's talking to Deb, right? Yeah.
Yes. I mean, you don't have to get into details, but I think it would be helpful if it's, you know, it's up to you. I'm not gonna.
I don't even know what part is so big. It's just like,
Just talking if you want to.
um,
What do you think Vanessa's talking about?
well, I think growing up as a Jehovah's Witness
Okay.
and all of, yeah. that type of stuff and how they view people, the world, how they ostracize you, kick you out, treat you. Yeah. I think that's what she's referring to.
Yeah.
It's,
My
you
teacher,
know,
Roy, used to say, there's no hate like Christian hate.
right. And, you know, they talk about love and stuff like that. And then they can just change your entire life by something you do. And then now all of a sudden, no one speaks to you anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
When
And so-
that's, I think, the time you should be helping people.
You
is
think?
when they go through a hard time.
Yeah. Yeah, I try to be very open to like just whatever people are doing. But I was just saying to my students last night, there is nothing that gets my blood boiling like exclusion in the name of religion, in the name of Jesus. Like I start fighting with people. I will fight with people on the street. I will block people from my Facebook page. Like I can't stand it because it also just seems so dumb. Like it just doesn't even think like it's not even critical thinking. Like how can this possibly like even be a thing, right? And it's usually those kind of fundamentalist religions that are always like quoting scripture, quoting scripture, quoting scripture. But then just what you said, but then when the person is in their deepest moment of need, that's when we're gonna like kick them out and ostracize them. Like, what is that about? It's not just Christianity either. It's the fundamental, all of the major religions that I know of have a fundamentalist branch and they also have a mystic branch, right? And then everything in between. So we can go with the Christians because that's what a lot of us know, but they're not the only ones. But yeah, totally, Deb. And also you're giving, selfishly, you're giving me hope because I told you that I just met my like grandson and he's growing up in this like awful, Christian nationalist family. And I just have to tell myself, well, he's only 3 and lots of people figure that out and get out and leave it. But I'm sure that was really wounding because it's also when that's like baked in, it's also very primal part of like who you are and being raised that way. And I'm sure I'm guessing that there were some things that felt really good about that for some period of time. Maybe like the feeling of inclusion or the feeling of protection or the feeling of being chosen, right? And so I don't take it lightly when people have to make that decision to finally leave, or even if they've been excommunicated, when they can even like make peace, so to speak, with being excommunicated. Yeah. I'm glad you're here.
Me too.
Just the other day, I saw it wasn't the other day, it was I was at home in Mexico and I saw these 3 white people and they were outside of La Ermita, my space, and they're like looking like as if they were looking for directions. And I said, "Oh, are you folks lost?" And they got really bright and they're like, "No, we're not lost. We were just sort of figuring out where we were going to go." And I was like, "Oh, still not thinking anything." And then they turn around and they've got the watchtower with them and they start coming towards me. And I said, I didn't get rude, but I just said, "Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I want nothing to do with your religion." And I shut the door. I didn't slam it. I just shut the door. So, yeah.
They're on the streets now. And when I've been in a really good mood before and I'd go have my picture taken with them and then send it to my family. And I just for fun, they're humorous. They get the joke, but it's like, look, my family will love this. Can I take a picture with you guys? Sure.
Well, that's sort of redemptive. I mean, there's a little redemption there, right? In that they think it's funny, and that shows like that connection is still there, and it shows that their humanity is still there. They're
And they know I'm never coming back.
Yeah. But they're not willing to let you completely go.
Yeah, yeah. It's most of my family, like my sister, my half sister, they're not involved anymore. So my parents are not, but my brother still is, but he's kind of got a little leg in and a little leg out, and he's very open-minded.
Just keep
More
it
than
going.
I would have thought. Yeah.
Get him over
Yeah,
to the
it's
E.
interesting, because obviously Deborah and I are, what do we, I don't know what they have, hell. What do they have? What do Jehovah Witnesses have? You-
Hell,
We're going
right?
to hell.
Oh,
I
no,
don't
no, no,
know.
there's no hell. They don't believe in hell. There's no
Oh,
Where do we
heaven.
go?
Well,
As a
there's
saint,
heaven, but only 144,000 go to heaven. The
oh,
meek
look
inherit the earth. And yeah, there's no hell. That's why you die, you dust, you go back to you. There's no spirit
back.
life after. No life after.
It's funny because like Deborah and I have been together for 30 years, and I got to know her. Both our parents are passed now, but are dead now. And we say passed. Somebody said, why do we say passed? Dead, and that they it was interesting, but they eventually, really embraced me and treated me like a family member. And her mom would tell me that she loved me, and like that was definitely outside the religion, because
yeah.
probably shouldn't even been talking to me, so but yeah, it's
She was like that. She'd be like, now I'll tell Vanessa I love her. Now I don't agree with how you two live. But tell her I
Say it.
love her. And I know my dad once, he was just like, you know what? I don't know. He was an elder. And my
mm,
brother's an elder. Oh, he resigned though recently. But my dad would be like, men don't treat you right anyway. And I didn't want to tell him, women can be, doesn't always feel that way. But he was just like, men just don't treat you right. Somehow I felt this comfort that he didn't think I was with some guy abusing me.
Well, what I just keep hearing, I'm thinking about like that whole Atma Shatakam thing, right? Like I hear this like really powerful identity because they probably grew up in that too, right? So it's this thing that's like so strong in the incarnation, and yet their like humanity or their love, it's like it can't be fully blocked, right? Like when I was saying that divinity is present in all beings, not equally manifest. And like the way you're describing your parents is, it's like that divinity just like it wanted to come more, and yet the identity, the container of that was just so powerful, right? And I think it's also important to remember that the vast majority of people don't actually choose their religion, right? You just do what your parents did and what your grandparents did, and so it's unique to find people who have converted or have taken on a religion, and sometimes that can give me just a little bit of compassion and a little bit of hope. I will just share, as we're on that topic, the person that I just recently said, don't even, when you see me in the street, don't even wave to me. Don't act like you don't know me at all. And I've probably known him for like 10 years, but he just started getting all this like just, religious, Christy, Jesus-y stuff, but mean, hateful things. And then finally I said, Jonas, let's just agree to like, we're just never going to be on the same page. We're both children of God. We're our unique expressions. We're good. And he wrote back and he said, actually, you're not a child of God. And I was like, okay, so there's no play. Like, I'm just like, I don't need, he's also a man. He's not white, he's Mexican, but still. But like, yeah, it's like that kind of thinking, there's nowhere to go. There's no reason to even have a conversation with that. Like, where do you go with that? And so that's I think something that's so sweet in the way that you're talking about your parents, that they were still able to feel that even with that really strong container. Carrie, it looked like you wanted to say something. No? Okay, I thought I saw that.
No, I was just like, boy, bye.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And interestingly, he's a convert. And another person that I just asked not to speak with me is also a convert. And that person, I've known her since she was young, a Mexican girl. And I said to her, you used to be the most loving person I know, open-hearted and open-minded, and then you found Jesus. And so I don't want to talk to you anymore. She said, "That's okay, Molly, because you're going to hell." That's literally what she said. So, because I do bad work, because I talk about death and dying. That was their reason too. That I'm like, anyway, yeah. So, I want to just briefly talk a little bit about this idea of our practices, and then we're going to take a break, and then I'm going to put you into some dyads. So, going back to the idea of our practice, and I looked at it again, and everybody filled out. And Deb, you were like, you're like Little Miss Homework lady. You went from 0 to 60. I loved it. I completely like filled out a gold star over there. So, remember, like I said, it was like sort of like a trick question. I wasn't meaning for it to be a trick question, but I realized that when I asked, like, what is your practice? Like, it sort of implies that there should be some answer. And especially if we have something like yoga, then we usually start talking about that. Like, this is the yoga, this is the yoga, this is the yoga, which is totally fine. It's great. Everyone that's here with me on retreat, they're all yoga people. So they all like to do yoga. But what we do a lot over this retreat, we do a lot of journaling, we do a lot of singing, we do a lot of studying like scripture and poetry from different faith traditions. We do a lot of like contemplative walks where we'll set a timer for a half an hour, and then we'll go out and we'll come back and report, what did I see? What did I smell? What did I hear? What did I think? Whatever the six senses are. So we do a lot of these kinds of practices, and there happens to be here and then we talk about, what do these practices do for us? And there happens to be a Jesuit priest here, also a convert, also super annoying. But so he kind of keeps, my students are saying, I feel like he's testing us. I feel like he's like belittling us every time at dinner. Like, but what did you do? But what does contemplation look like? But what? And so we've just been having these conversations about practice and why we do it, and how you could use any word. I just use the word contemplation because it's the word I'm familiar with and I've heard before. But when we think about our practice outside of like necessarily our yoga practice or our working out practice or even like our going to church practice, when we think about how can we slow down, how can we really notice things, how can we spend time in reflection on something, even like the singing that we do here. What we usually do is we find a beautiful poem, typically like from a spiritual realm, and someone will read it out loud, and then I don't know if y'all know the practice of Lectio Divina, probably, maybe not. And it's a mystic Christian practice where you take a piece of scripture and then you take it outside of the scripture and you just focus on this one part of it. I can tell you about it another time. So we take whatever the poem is, and then we take a word or a phrase that someone was like, I loved that one. And then we just put a tune to it and we just start singing that. And then we set a timer for like 8 minutes and we just sing that same thing over and over and over until we're in sort of this meditative state, hearing our voices together. And then afterwards we'll talk about like, what did that mean to you? Like, what does it mean when you say that? So we've had like Grace Transforms is one of the ones we've sang a lot. Another one that we've sang a lot is this is how we are wholehearted. We keep our eyes wide open. So we've been singing that. That came from a poem that somebody offered. So I want you to start really just, you don't have to do whatever, but I would love for you to start thinking about this idea of like contemplative practices, practices that are getting you to slow down, practices that are getting you to observe things in different ways, practices that are about space and quiet and possibility and perspective. And if then you look at what is the point of contemplation, like if you look in like especially Christian literature, they'll say the point of contemplation is so that we act in the world in a way that is really reflecting our divinity, or if you want to use yoga words, like our true nature. But we need to do practice to do that, right? It's not something that usually just comes to us. And what I really want to suggest is that really in any work, in any conversation, but particularly like even Naomi, when you were talking about your friend in the very beginning, who's not dead yet, right? That ability that we can ultimately bring to these situations of people that are in pain or they're suffering or they're afraid. I can teach you all of this stuff and I will, all this practical stuff, and I will. And I truly believe that is that thumbs up because you want some practical stuff. That I truly believe that it's
I didn't
who
actually do that. I don't know where that came
I
from.
think I'm gonna teach some practical stuff, and you're like, thumbs up, Molly, and let's get to it. That truly this piece that's if you read that thing that I sent you that said the healer heal thyself, right? And the new equation for healing, it's you plus your techniques equals the conditions for change. So we have all the techniques, but typically in the healing professions, we don't talk about you. Like, who are you to be doing these healing techniques with another person? Right. And so when we can really spend some time cultivating that part of us that has spaciousness, that has quietude, that doesn't have to come with an idea or an opinion or an agenda of what has to happen or that I need to be seen or received in a particular way, that will really, really help not only us in our work in when we're in the work, but also sustainable over time. And it will also help the person that we are supporting. I'm only me, but I would say that most of the time in my life, when I've been in very dark spaces, what is the least helpful to me is somebody coming at me with a clear idea of what I'm supposed to be doing. So these contemplative practices are I believe what help us to develop that. And what's beautiful to me about contemplative practices and why I'm so committing to do these retreats every year is it's really showing that really we can turn most things into a contemplative act, right? Like I'll send you some photos of like the altar we're building or the mandala we're building and things like that. Like we're building a progressive mandala, so every day we just add to it, add to it, add to it, add to it, and it's like huge now. But there's not, we just started it together, but then there's no time that we're like, now we're going to work on the mandala. It's just people coming in and like placing these tiny things around it, right? Like all those are acts of really slowing down. The last thing I want to say just before taking a little break is also coming back to Dina and Vanessa's question, I realized, or sort of cogitation, thinking about that article, this is part of the answer, I guess. And I didn't think about that. It's you, like that's your mom or whatever, and your techniques. Like, I can teach you these movements in yoga, mom, or I can, support you to not do this, mom. But in the article, I said, you plus your techniques equals conditions for change. And when I quit the hospital, one of the realizations I had was that I was being asked as if the expectation was for me to create change. And I realized early on that that's not something I can do. That's completely in the agency of the other person. But what I can do is set up a container or the conditions in which they might best be prone to change. And then that also releases me that my job then was to set up the conditions. My job was never to make it happen because I can't. And the more I keep pushing and trying to make it happen, what I've found from, well, I don't even do it anymore, but when I was a clinician, the more I pushed and tried to make it happen, the less happened. And the more unhappy I was, and the more I hated my job. And when I hated my job, I mean, I was a lot younger, but when I hated my job, I had to find someone to blame for why things weren't working. And that meant it was either me or my client. So who's going to get blamed? Right? It's not going to be me. I did what I was supposed to do. It's because you don't ever follow the instructions. That's why your back still hurts. And when I let that go, everything changed. Like, oh, you're not going to follow those instructions and your back still hurts? Okay. Let me help you with your hurting back. Done. It's like a game changer. So that's what I'll leave us with on a break, unless anyone has a response or a question or something.
I think, I mean, I think it's pretty powerful, and I think, like, when you think about, like, for example, what's going on in this country right now, like, we can't make, like, what is our job in setting up the conditions for change, but we can't actually make the change happen
Yeah.
as much as we would like to. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, but then it's like overwhelming because it's one person, like, and you, like, there's this big amount of there's a lot of change that has to occur, and like how, so yeah. But when you're dealing one-on-one, I understand. I understand, like, with a person. But I always like extending things to, like, how does that apply to some of our bigger problems too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think my opinion is that we always should be. When we're always just only this, I think that that's one way for us to have sort of self-care and resiliency, is to be able to see that I can make small change in my community. But when I eventually, if I end up just staying there, then I don't think we're actually really fulfilling the bigger question. So I agree with you completely. Like, how do we turn these things into a more macrocosm? And yeah, and I think that it's so right what you're saying. Like, we can't make any of these changes. We can't just make this stop happening. So we have to just keep thinking about what can I do? What are my techniques? And also, like, who am I? Even in the realm of social justice, even in the realm of advocacy, who am I? And that's when I talk about too, like, I'm such a fiery person, and I've had to learn that when I act like a firefly, like a wildfire, then people just want to run away from me or fight back. So I think, like, John Lewis also said it, like, I always tell my students, we should be a wood stove, right? Like, I'm burning hot, but I'm drawing you to me. And so
Mm.
you know what I'm saying, and I can start to perhaps convince you, change you, make change, but it's probably not going to happen when it's coming from my fieriest place, because that's just going to make people resist. So there's my me and there's my techniques, and that's what I think we have to keep committing to on both the micro and the macro. Yeah. All right. All right. Yeah. Were you saying goodbye, or are you asking for something,
Oh,
Carrie?
hand up.
Yes.
What retreat center are you at?
It's called the Grunwald Guild. You
Okay,
probably never have heard of it. But offline you should, because it's not really a retreat center like it is, that it's not. And anyway, it's amazing. So
cool.
yeah, I'll send it to you offline for sure. So it's 10 till. Let's take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll go for a little half hour, maybe a little bit over. That's it. Okay. I'll see you then. So that means whoever was with Naomi, guess what? You get to go.
That was
Was that
me.
you? Okay.
Yeah. So
Overview.
we I think we were both kind of, sorry, I'm eating wasabi peas. The wasabi's got to me.
You want to take a minute? Want us to
Yeah,
go back to
we're okay. So we talked about we both believe that kind of from a more scientific standpoint, like, energy is never destroyed. So, like, from a pure, like, that standpoint, we don't think it just disappears. It doesn't. Something happens with the energy in all living things. I mean, whether it's your dog or whatever, like, it goes somewhere. And so we pretty much agree. But then we got into, like, that combined with, like, things that have happened to us. Like, I was telling her at my grandmother's wake, who I was very distraught, upset. It was like the still very most painful death, one of the most painful deaths. And I was just there in the wake, because Catholics, the wakes, and I just remember I was just crying. I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden, like, like there's this puff of air that comes to the side of my ear, and I looked behind me because I was like, who's blowing on my head? And I turned around, there was nobody there. And so I'm like, I was my grandmother. I know like it was her. And so, and then I shared like she came to me in my dream, even though I wasn't able to be there when she died. I felt very incomplete, but like I had a dream and she was in the dream and she hugged me. So like it felt like she was there and I couldn't like, I was like, I woke up and I'm like, oh, I feel like I got to say goodbye to her a little, like, so, and then we talked about other things. So like the science combined with like things that have actually happened to people, it's not like just us. And we talked about mediums and how mediums, whether we believe it or not, they have told people things that it's like only the person who died could have known, and like how does that happen? And so like the science plus the data points of what's happened to people like make us we're on the page of like there's no doubt that something is out there, but maybe we don't have the capacity to really understand it. Maybe we don't remember as we're transforming, as the energy transforms. So anyway, that's kind of high level what we talked about.
Mm. I'm like, I just wrote a bunch of stuff down and I'm like, we'll bring it next week because otherwise I have so many things to say about that. Thank you. That's an awesome high level. The other two groups, Deb or Carrie. Carrie, we haven't heard much from you. Are you okay to share? You never have to. Sometimes I just say that to draw someone forward, but it's not shaming or pressure or anything.
Yeah. Okay. So Deb and I, we kind of talked about the same concept. Like, we're not sure what happens, but we feel like there is something, and like energy transfer or whatever kind of thing. And this kind of the same concept, how people, will be talking to folks that they knew that have already died when they're on their deathbed. And like I brought up dreams too, because dreams are so crazy sometimes, and like people that have died visit us in dreams, and sometimes we just have dreams where we're like in another world, but it's like it seems really real. Like, what is that world? Is that our past life? Is that where I lived, you know, 200 years ago? Or I don't know, like there's, spirit consciousness out there, awareness. And then we just kind of also talked about our, religious traditions we grew up with a little bit, and kind of the overview.
Hello. Yeah. I'm so geeking on this. I'm like writing down all these comments for next time. Thank you for that, Carrie. Okay, Tracy and Dina. Tracy, we haven't heard much from you. Would you be the spokesperson?
Sure, yeah. So we talked about I said ironically, even though I do all these super spiritual things, at heart I am an atheist. I'm really curious. I haven't had time to listen to that podcast, but you've really piqued my interest during this because I do all this, I do like a ton of this stuff, but at heart, I really just, I'm an atheist. I don't believe there's some sort of deity, at least. So yeah, I'm just kind of I don't know. I have no idea what happens um whenever we die. And so anyway, that's the little irony about me is, because I think I had the most stuff about all these practices that I do. Um and I don't want to speak for Dina, but she's had more, she has more of a firmer belief. I think, don't, if I'm misconstruing anything you say, feel free to jump in. But yeah, more of a belief in reincarnation and in being able to commune with folks on the other side. Um, So yeah, that's what we talked about. I'm feeling kind of awkward. I don't want to put words
No,
into.
no. Yeah, I
Yeah,
have to
okay.
jump in.
Yeah, no,
Just
please
it's
do.
more that I
Quickly,
choose
quickly.
to believe a little bit, right? Like it behooves me to believe in these things I've been studying for decades, and I just kind of choose to have this belief system. Yeah, and I don't care if it's not proven more. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, so just a couple things to finish up. One is I have to go back and really look at what atheism, like what does that mean? Like I know what it means as like a smart person and a writer, but like I just want to like look at like what exactly does it mean? Because it reminds me so much about these contemplative practices that we're doing here. To what end, right? And do any of us like I'll talk about God, but then I'm like, am I sure there's like a God? For me, if there is any kind of a God, it's more from like the Hindu perspective, which, like I said, was never personified. There's no idea of a God that's like this all-knowing like person with a clipboard or something like that. So I think what they use the word God Brahman, it really is like when Vanessa was saying like energy never is destroyed. I feel like it feels more like that. So I have just a lot of curiosity in thinking about that. Um, sometimes when I'm teaching, I'll feel like that. I talk about God all the time, and then I sit in my own silence, and I'm like, do I even believe that there's God? Like, I don't know. I don't know what that is exactly. So that then makes me think about what Dina added in too. Like, what we remember is that faith is actually like we've chosen that belief, right? Or not even a belief, like even using the word belief, like faith is something that we know that it gives us comfort. This is the idea. This is the construct. It gives us comfort. It gives us some guardrails. It gives us some language. It gives us like rituals. It gives us things to do. But the act of faith itself includes doubt. So there's actually, I'll put it in there too. There's a great teeny little book by Alan Watts called The Wisdom of Insecurity. That's all about that, about like we're so sure that faith means we're sure. And what if faith means actually that this is what I've chosen, and you could poke holes in it because I'm not here to defend it because it might be true and it might not be. It's what I feel sort of thing. And then I was also just listening to a podcast that you might not want to listen to if you love Mother Teresa, like, because I think most of us probably, or many of us are aware of the crisis of faith that came out after she died. She was having a massive crisis of faith all throughout her tenure. Um, uh, what the podcast I listened to though is actually also that her religious order was like heinous. Like it was her order, and it was like abusive and culty and tons of like sexual trauma, and will make you think of Mother Teresa differently. But more to the part about we look at someone like that as like this icon of faithfulness, and yet in her private letters, she was constantly talking about crisis of faith, and she was writing to her elders and telling them that, her superiors, I do not believe this. I feel dry inside. I feel hollow inside. And all of that was subverted so that we could keep propping up this person that had no questions about faith. So sort of interesting, like historical persona that all of us are very aware of. So I wanted to close then by just giving you 2 homework assignments that you're going to have for next, or one question for consideration. And the other one is a homework assignment that like you have to do. I only have like 2 of these. So the first one is that next week we're going to start talking about like what are we actually doing. So what I want each of you to do, and I'm going to write this to you as well. So you're going to say it and then I'm going to write it. You're going to write a vignette, like a little, like as if you're like setting a scene for a play about something that you might walk into, right? This is a hospital room of a 15-year-old. He has been battling leukemia. His family is in here. He likes baseball, whatever. And then that's it. So again, it's like you're the playwright and all you're doing is setting the scene. You're not talking about what the actors are going to do at all, right? So you're just coming up with about a paragraph long description. It could be something you've actually walked into. It could be a child, it could be an adult, it could be a long illness, it could be a hospital, it could be someone's home. You're just setting a scene. Okay. And then we're going to use that to start talking about in pairs, like, okay, well, if I walked into that scene, what do I think my job would be? Like, what would I possibly do in that situation? But I don't want you to start thinking about that when you're writing that. Right now, all you're thinking of is setting the scene. Does that feel clearish? And then I'll write that. Okay. That's one. The second one is I would like you to go out into the world and find something that comes from the natural world. Could even be like a piece of gravel, a little rock, a piece of, sea glass. I guess it doesn't technically come from the natural world. A branch, a piece of lichen, like anything at all. But it has to be something you're holding in your hand. I'm going to tell you because I'm feeling sassy. I usually try to keep a good poker face when people are like, I decided to do it differently than you told me to. But I'm kind of getting tired of that. So I'm going to ask you to do something, and this is how I want you to do it. And so if you're going to tell me that you did it, but not the way I told you, then just don't bother reporting it because I actually don't care. So I'm asking you to do something. So you're going to have this thing, whatever it is. It could be a big thing, a small thing, but it's something you're holding in your hand. You can actually look at. And then I want you to set a timer. And for 20 minutes, I want you to write about that thing. And you have to write the whole 20 minutes. If when I say you have to write the whole 20 minutes, there's a pause and you're like, oh, I don't know what else to say, right? It's not like you have to do like what they call river writing, where you're never taking your hand up off the paper, but you have time to stop and think. You absolutely do not have to do it this way, but like if you feel like you're out of suggestions, you could think about the 5 senses. Like, what does this look like? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? So you can find different things to prompt yourself, but you're just going to keep writing about this thing from the natural world that you have sitting in front of you or that you're holding in your hand. Okay. Does that feel pretty clear too? Something from the natural world, set a timer, write about it for 20 minutes. That's it. We good? All right. I will send all of that to you probably tomorrow morning, so it won't be such a quick turnaround. And I think we meet again in a week, but it'll be there. We'll know. I'll let you know. And just thanks for being here. This was a fun little break. I was kind of like, oh my gosh, my brain has to go to a completely different place, and it was so wonderful. So thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.